Welcome to episode 7 of the We'll Bring the Popcorn Entertainment Podcast. I'm Brad, this is Josh, and man, this was a week, if you're a Marvel geek, to just bask in all the glorious news and trailers and everything that it gave us.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. We're going to get into all of that here in just a minute. We're also going to be talking about on this episode 5 of Masters of the Air that we've been following along each and every week from Apple TV Plus, as well as our thoughts and opinions on the new Sony Marvel-adjacent film, Madam Web. So we'll give that opinion as well. But Brad, you want to go ahead and talk about the first thing you wanted to bring up today?
Yeah, so probably the biggest thing, of course, Marvel-wise that we got, I mean, there was two huge things, really, was the Deadpool versus Wolverine trailer. We finally see what Deadpool 3 is going to look like. We get the official title, and so many Easter eggs, so much stuff within that trailer. Even so, Disney admitted that within the numbers, 365 million views, which broke a viewership record. They admitted that the Super Bowl viewership numbers were included in that, so you know, it got a little boost because of Super Bowl, but man, that trailer was... I'm ready to already buy tickets for 2 to 3 showings.
Absolutely. That's definitely going to be one that we both texted each other when the trailer came out. We're like, yes, we're going to see this. We're going to see this multiple times. I'm so excited for it. What I love most about it is it feels like it's keeping a lot of that original Deadpool charm that you know, I say charm kind of tongue-in-cheek because it is vulgar, it's violent, and it looks like we're going to keep all of that with Disney slapping a label on it too, but like Disney's letting them be Deadpool. It's like it's
Ryan Reynolds started right away making a pegging joke and mentioning Disney's name and looking straight in the camera like, you know that it's got right away. We still got the Deadpool charm.
Yeah, and you get the teases of, you know, all the different characters that have been in the Deadpool movies in the past kind of showing up as well as obviously Hugh Jackman coming back as Wolverine, which is so exciting. I know he's publicly lobbied to try to peer pressure him in there. Normally, I'm not an advocate for peer pressuring somebody, but in this case, like, yes, it worked. It's good.
Thank
it's
you,
all in
Ryan
good humor.
Reynolds.
Yes, thank you so much for that. But and it looks like we're finally getting a proper Hugh Jackman Marvel Wolverine. Like,
yeah, we've got him in the suit. He's in the suit.
It's amazing. I'm beyond excited to see this film multiple times.
And we also possibly got a little look at we did at our first variant inside of there, because if you notice within the trailer, as Deadpool's walking through, it looks like a casino, we got the back of Wolverine in a white jacket, which is, we kind of know, if you know the comics at all, that's Patch. Right. You know, Wolverine with an eye patch. But the thing is, it didn't look like Hugh Jackman's build.
Right.
Could we potentially have a cameo? There's been a couple names that have been thrown out that they want to replace Hugh Jackman, one being Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, and many other things. But of course, that's what he's mainly known for. And Taron Egerton, Egerton, who's known for the Kingsman, the Sing movies, a bunch of that. Both of those have been rumored heavily. It does look kind of in between one of those. So that's going to be really interesting if we get one of those playing a Wolverine inside of there.
And it's smart because they're incorporating it into the already known like MCU like right out the gate, because you know, like in the trailer he gets pulled in by the TVA, which if you've seen the Loki series on Disney Plus, it's the agency that Loki goes to work for and help and work with. So we're getting that element as well, and it looks like we're going to be jumping into different alternate timelines and things like that. It's looking like very Multiverse of Madness-esque, but definitely going into that multiverse space that Marvel's been exploring a lot of lately. So I'm very excited about that as well, just to see, to your point, all the different worlds and different things Deadpool could find himself being mixed in with. Because if there ever was a true multiversal character that could work no matter where they're at, it's definitely Deadpool. So I mean, it's going to be a ton of fun. I'm super excited for it.
And we had the destroyed 20th Century Fox logo. Yep. We had a snow forest scene that looked like a Avengers Age of Ultron battle scene potentially. Yep. There was a Secret Wars comic book with Doctor Doom cover, along with the bottle drink from Edward Norton's Hulk movie that Stan Lee drank that was tainted with the Hulk blood. So like, even this first trailer, we had like 10 potential Easter eggs. Like, some of the stuff we're still speculating on who and what and the settings and stuff, but there's so many. Like, this is just going to be fan service overload, and I cannot wait for it.
It's going to be one that we go and see, and it's going to require multiple viewings, I think, which is kind of a genius on their part because they're going to pack so much into this film that, you know, if you're like hardcore comic nerds like we are that have paid attention to these stories over the years, like we're going to pick up on little things too. And it's going to be a lot of fun to dissect that and talk about it. And you could absolutely expect us to give, you know, a review on it when the time comes for sure. Cause we'll be there night one, just ready to go. Like I'm beyond excited.
It definitely feels like a film you probably want to watch multiple times because there's more than likely going to be so many Easter eggs. Like we've had a ton of rumors, which I don't want to touch on most of them because we don't want to spoil. We still want to have mystery when we go into this film, but there are so many different cameos that have been rumored, so much stuff. Like it's just going to if you're a big geek about it, your head's going to explode from watching this movie, and you're going to need to watch it multiple times just to see what you missed.
Yeah, they've been touting it as like Deadpool saving the MCU, kind of. And it could be a literal sense because we've seen here the last few projects that they've put out in the theaters and things like that haven't exactly lived up to the expectations that we've had for Marvel based on a lot of these films, like both commercially and like quality of story, right? So it seems like Deadpool could be that big kickoff back to getting, you know, Marvel movies and things like that back to where we expect them in that high level of quality, high entertainment value, and, you know, everything that we've come to expect from them over the years. We feel that a lot of people feel that they've gotten away from the last couple years at least, and it feels like that's going to finally bring everything back into the fold. But that's probably not the only property that's going to be doing that.
And that's one of the great things about Deadpool being a character that breaks the fourth wall and is aware of everything is that we also got that nod that Ryan Reynolds makes that joke that I am Marvel Jesus.
Right.
Like it's already touting within the movie itself that, hey, I'm coming to save the MCU. Like, thank you, Ryan. Yes, comes. Like, we know the last few phases have been not up to the quality that we had before. There's been some good stories. There's been some rough stories. So it does feel they're putting their all into with Deadpool here, potentially being a reset button to relaunch everyone's love again for the comic book movies in the MCU. Because we even heard Kevin Feige has loved what he's seen of Deadpool versus Wolverine so much that he's already talking about bringing them back some more. So there's already rumors that we would see both of them in Secret Wars. Now there's talks that with how Kevin liked it so much that we might get it in the King Dynasty as well. Like, he's liking it so much, he wants more of it.
Which is always a good thing for us. It feels like they're going to take proper care of this character. I know there was a lot of concern when Fox bought the rights to it that Marvel and Disney were going to kind of tone it down and, toning it down is probably the best way I could describe it, but definitely making it not as edgy or vulgar or violent as it probably needs to be. But it feels like, if anything, they've gone the exact opposite, and it feels like it's going to be every bit as chaotic, if not more so.
Yep.
Which is going to be a lot of fun for us. It's definitely not one to take the kids to, obviously, but like it's going to be, if I were to guesstimate, $1 billion movie.
Oh, it's
easily.
I have a hard time seeing it not make $1 billion.
Like it's going to be absolutely
insane. Even being rated R, which we don't know the official rating yet, but we have to, it has to be rated R.
It's 100% going to be rated R. Like it's almost impossible for it not to be.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, people would lose their minds. But knowing just enough of like the subject matter of even the trailer, it's going to be wild. I would really love to see a Red Band trailer for this. Start to pop up at the theaters, like for some, for those of us that want a little bit more of a teaser before the film, but I would love one of those Red Band trailers. So if you're not familiar with what a Red Band trailer is, a Red Band trailer is an uncensored trailer. It's more of including the vulgarity, the violence a little bit more in the trailer than you would normally see. Is like, they throw the whole, this trailer has been suited for all audiences. If you see the green version of it, that means it's safe. If you see the red version of it, that's called a Red Band trailer. That's when it's getting real.
I'm curious how the marketing is going to be from here, because how much can they actually show without giving stuff away? Like, right. We've already potentially had a bunch of information already shown in this first trailer.
Right.
They've done some posters, but it's all, been around bracelets and necklaces and, the Deadpool and Wolverine heart. Like, how many trailers or what are we actually going to see that's not going to spoil everything? Because it feels like from everything that we've heard through rumors and that they may not be able to show a whole lot. We may be seeing the same scenes remixed a little bit, quite a bit
so.
for it.
I think they're going to do a good job of keeping as much away from people as they can until you go to see it. Because like I said, the fever pitch for it is going to be as high as it can be, I think. I don't think we've seen as much anticipation for a Marvel film like this since probably Spider-Man No Way Home and all the speculation that came around for that, how they did such a brilliant job. I'm going to spoil a little bit if you haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home, but keeping all the variants of Spider-Man out of the film and all the different tie-ins to, the previous movies and everything like that. They did a pretty good job of keeping that stuff out of the trailer, but it was the worst kept secret in the world that these guys were all going to be in it. But I think they're going to take that same approach to this film, and they're just going to leave a lot of stuff out that you're just going to, go into the film saying, holy, you know what, and just kind of just enjoying the film at that point.
Yeah. So we have Deadpool versus Wolverine will be in theaters July 26th of this year. We cannot wait. It's one of our most anticipated films of the year, and that trailer did nothing but get us extra hype. And I would expect, there's nothing official yet, but I would expect that we're going to get an early advance ticketing for this, probably, with it coming in July, May, possibly.
I'd say so, yeah.
They're going to want to see how it's tracking. They're going to want to see those ticket sales ahead of time. So I'm feeling we're going to get those advanced tickets coming.
Yeah, those typically come out 2 to 4 weeks before a film. The bigger films tend to be about a month before it comes out, but this one's probably going to be 2 months. I think they did something similar with Spider-Man, if I'm not mistaken. I
think so.
It was like 6 to 8 weeks out.
Endgame was similar as well.
Something like these movies that they know are going to make a ton of money, right? They're going to try to get you signed up and in the theater before time. But that's definitely going to be one. And it kind of touches on last week that we were talking about Marvel putting more emphasis on their bigger properties and things like that. And we speculated what it could mean. Well, we literally got the answer to that this week when on Valentine's Day, Marvel just out of the blue dropped a teaser image confirming the cast of the Fantastic Four.
That was a surprise.
It was definitely a surprise because everybody was like, well, when are they going to announce it? This is supposed to be this big thing. Who's playing who? We finally get that answer this week with the image. Pedro Pascal's been confirmed to play Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm. You've got Joseph Quinn playing the Human Torch. Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things, who played Eddie. It's fantastic. And then I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but it's Ebon Moss-Baccarat. He's famous from The Bear. He was in that TV show. He's playing the Thing. I'm beyond excited for this finally because we get the final answer to who's going to be in this film, and then they casually just drop a release date on it as well. Like, what did you think about it when you saw it?
It was kind of crazy because most of the time we've seen them paraded out at Comic-Con, or we've got some sort of big trailer video announcement or something else, and this was a Valentine's card that we got to show off the cast. But I'm excited. Like I'm with some that I'm unsure of Pedro as Reed, just because there does become an oversaturation with an actor when they're getting so many big roles that it's hard to see them disappear into the character.
Yeah.
Like, because he's Joel in The Last of Us, he's the Mandalorian, he's everywhere. Great actor, love the guy. But is like trying to see him disappear into Reed Richards. Like, I hope it happens for me, and that just a little bit. Like, I know he can do it. It's just because he's been in so much stuff. Will I see Reed, or am I just going to see Pedro the whole time?
Sure, and he's a phenomenal actor, like you said. I'm excited for that. It seems like they're going to shoot this and put this out within a year and a half, right? So they threw it into July of 2024 or 2025. Sorry, not this year, next year. July of next year, which means that they're probably going to start shooting on it fairly soon. I would think they would have to, because as of right now, he's shooting season 2 of The Last of Us. To your point, he's taking care of that, but then he's going to jump right into Fantastic Four. So.
And now we know that Mandalorian Grogu is supposed to start filming this year as well, which. For the last season and probably for this, he's probably going to be mainly coming in to do the voice work afterwards. But you've got 3 gigantic things that he's filming this year between The Last of Us, Mandalorian and Grogu, and the Fantastic Four. Like, the guy's staying busy.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, right? So I mean, Pedro's staying busy, but to your point, there's definitely some apprehension for him, but also for this property in general, right? Because you've had several Fantastic Four films already have been attempted, right? So you've got the Fox properties that, the last one, the most recent one that was made was a pretty hot topic of discussion among people, despite the fact that it had, an incredible cast. It was cast extremely well, but the story was not good. It wasn't executed the best. Like, I didn't think it was the worst film, but there were a lot of people that just absolutely hated the films.
I think a lot of their problems with how Doom was handled in that as well.
Sure, and how that was written, and then, you go back to the older, the last attempt that people made at making those films with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans, who obviously went on to become Captain America, but he was originally Johnny Storm in that type of film as well. So I get the apprehension because there have been some failed attempts, but I'm very curious to see what Marvel's going to do with it now that they've got their hands on it, and knowing that the Fantastic Four are such a big part of Marvel lore. Like, outside of the Avengers, they are like the OGs of Marvel, right? They're like they're called the first family of Marvel for a reason. So you got to think that they're going to do everything within their power to make this successful and put their best foot forward with it.
And they drop some kind of interesting that we take as hints in that image that they released, that Valentine's card, because if you look at the aesthetic of it, it's a very retro image. The logo looks very retro. The house, the suits, everything they're in. You have the Thing holding what looks like a Life magazine. From it looked like. Looked it up. I think it was like 1963 cover. So could this be taking place in the past? Which, could we see that they get lost in the multiverse or in the quantum realm or lost in time or something? That's why no one knows who the Fantastic Four is, because it took place in the 60s and they disappeared on a mission or something. There's a lot they could do with it if they go in the past. You could even have them link up with Hank Pym and get Reed Richards and Hank Pym together in the 60s and do this. So if that 60s, 70s era seems to be the direction they're going, it's going to be really interesting to see how they do that. And then also bring them into the modern world, because, we have King Dynasty, we have Secret Wars. They're going to be a part of it.
Sure.
So if they do start them in the past, is it going to be in this movie, or is there going to be something else that brings them into the present day?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And one of the things that I think is very intriguing about the project is the fact that it's being directed by the same director who directed WandaVision. So WandaVision, if you've seen WandaVision, it's an absolutely brilliant, in my opinion, show on Disney Plus that has parts of it that take place in that retro time. Is it going to be of a similar type of storytelling to where something else could be going on that could possibly cause this to take place in a more retro time? You just don't know. But the fact that director is attached to it, I don't remember the guy's name, but he's the one as of now directing this film. It's very exciting for the possibilities that it could take, because he did such a good job with WandaVision that I'm really excited to see how he carries that over into this film as well. So the hopes are high for it. Obviously, with Marvel getting it now, the expectations are going to be through the roof. It's a star-studded cast. And, there's obviously more stuff going on with casting right now that I think we also wanted to touch on, but it seems like they're trying to fill out the rest of the film too, because, it's getting ready to start shooting soon.
Yeah, because we have some characters that we saw within the Jessica Alba Fantastic Four films with Silver Surfer and the Galactus Cloud. We didn't really get Galactus. He was covered in an astral cloud. So they're currently looking to cast for the Silver Surfer, which I'm a big fan of the guy who played the Silver Surfer before, because he's done Hellboy and done a whole lot of other stuff. And I say I'm a big fan, and I forget his name.
Of course. And that's just how big a fan is Brad, really. He can't remember the guy's name. But
yeah. But he was great. But yeah, of course, when I go to talk about him, I forget his name, because I butcher stuff. Even if I don't say their name, I'm just going to forget. But he's a great actor, and I apologize for forgetting his name with it. And I'm still racking my brain.
It's going to bother you for the rest of the day.
It's going to bother me for so long. But I thought he did a good job with what he was given, because it was also, he was the body of the Silver Surfer. He wasn't the voice. I believe it was Lawrence Fishburne was the voice of the Silver Surfer before or something?
I believe so, yes.
And so we're getting that recast. It's going to be, he's going to have to still be kind of all CG. I think they tried to do, it was a suit and CG in that one. This more like they're going to do all motion capture CG for the Silver Surfer. But also we've got Galactus being cast again. Right now they're saying they're looking at Javier Bardem to voice Galactus, which would be amazing because he can give a very menacing performance, like No Country for Old Men and everything. Like you can get a very menacing performance with his voice and his acting ability. Like he's insanely great.
Yeah, he's got one of my opinion the all-time greatest villain castings of all time, playing Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. Right, like absolutely terrifying. But if you can cast him as a Marvel villain, I'm all for it. Brilliant actor. He plays a bad guy so well, so effortlessly. And if he gets cast to play Galactus, I have no problems with that.
I believe they said the issue right now is just making sure there's time around his schedule because of all the other projects he has going on. From what's been said, I don't think it's that he's not interested. It's just, can he fit it in to what he's doing right now? And another one that we'll probably have cast for is we saw Herbie the Robot. You know, they kind of showed up, I think, in the 70s, the Fantastic Four comics in the 70s. I'm just going to throw out Alan Tudyk to be Herbie because he's voicing everything in Disney right now. So bring him in as Herbie because, you know, he was in Star Wars as doing voices in there. He's been in like every Disney movie lately. I love the guy. I remember his name.
Yeah, he remembered his name. Good job, Brad. I'm proud of you. But yeah, I mean, he would obviously be an incredible voice actor for that. I mean, that guy's, you could have him play literally anything and I would watch it.
He's so entertaining.
He's so much fun. But putting like we've talked about the film coming out in July next year, like looking ahead is absolutely loaded right now.
It is stacked.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I know you mentioned, you know, Fantastic Four, but we've talked about Jurassic World on this as well. And that's coming out next July. I believe the first DC Superman under James Gunn's coming out as well.
Superman Legacy is kind of right in the middle of Fantastic Four and Jurassic World. So that's 3 gigantic blockbusters back to back to back.
I love it. And it feels like we're getting back to that summer blockbuster like trend that we'd seen, that we'd gotten a little bit away from the last couple of years, but I'm very excited about the buzz.
And I believe the Thunderbolts was originally in July of next year, and the Fantastic Four. So it's got a new title. Before we were just thinking it's Fantastic Four. It's the Fantastic Four.
Correct.
It took the Thunderbolts spot, which Thunderbolts actually moved up into May 2025. So, you know, between May and July, because I haven't looked ahead to see what's in June or what else is in May, that's 4 big blockbuster type films in those months. So we've got a pretty stacked summer lineup next year coming.
And Marvel's right in the mix with that, right? So you've got 4 films in 2025 from Marvel that are on the slate, and 3 of them are out by July. Mm-hmm. So 3/4 of their films for the year are coming out early in the year, because you've got the next Captain America movie obviously coming out at the beginning of next year as well, along with Thunderbolts, and then, you know, the Fantastic Four, and it's like step on the gas, hit the brake, step on the gas, hit the brake. Like
one that its production has been exactly that, step on the gas, hit the brakes, is the Blade movie, which I loved what they did with the first 2, you know, Wesley Snipes Blade movies. We all know Blade Trinity was a little bit off, but there's a lot of issues with Wesley Snipes and everything during the filming of all those, and it was kind of causing a lot of the problems. But, you know, it's been in development limbo for a while now. Now it's set for November of 2025. There was a little bit of talk that came out that Marvel may also look for the Fantastic Four for November 2025, and I can only think that if they have to delay it for any reason, if there's a problem with filming or the, you know, visual artists need more time, that they're taking Blade's spot. Like, that's a backup spot. But it also kind of doesn't bode well for Blade. That is that going to be delayed yet again to 2026?
Well, Blade's been kind of a hot mess, right? Because it was supposed to have already come out end of last year, and now it's talking like it may not even come out. It's definitely not coming out this year, and it's may not come out next year as well. Like, that hurts, because I'm excited to see what Marvel's going to do with Blade as well, because, you know, the lead actor that's been hired to play Blade is a brilliant actor, right? Mahershala Ali. I'm probably butchering his name as well, but brilliant actor. He's already got some Marvel experience in the Luke Cage series, but he's going to be Blade now, and the fact that it's gone through so many issues at this point too is a little troubling. But I'm definitely looking forward to whatever they decide to finally, you know, put together for that and make it work. But to your point, yeah, if there's any delays in this film, like, obviously they're going to want to take the time with it and make it right. But they feel pretty confident throwing a July label on it already. Like, I think they're gonna knock it out the park and get it done.
Yeah.
I really do.
Even talking about potential more dread or issues with Blade being delayed, there has been some rumblings that they want to move forward with a Midnight Suns movie, which would more than likely feature Blade, Moon Knight, Punisher. Some of your darker heroes would be in this, so it would be a great movie if done right. But it just bodes like, I mean, they're talking about including Blade, but Blade has been in so much turmoil so far. Like, hopefully the Midnight Suns movie, if it does happen, doesn't have the same issues.
And that's got a lot of potential too, because if you're not familiar with the Midnight Suns, like you said, it's more of a dark take with the more darker Marvel heroes, right? So you've got, like you said, Blade, Punisher, Moon Knight, Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider. Like, there's a lot of really interesting properties that could be included in that I'm very excited for too. But the possibility of that being made is very, very exciting for me.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that's exciting, because we really weren't expecting it. Yeah, we knew it was coming this year, but we didn't know when it was coming. Now we have a date of March 20th for X-Men 97, which is an animated follow-up to X-Men, the animated series, which, you know, that was a big part of our childhood. That and Batman, the animated series, Spider-Man, the animated series, that's what got me into comics. Like, I wasn't exactly reading comics or really that knowledgeable until Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Spider-Man, X-Men, and Batman of the 90s. That got me loving comic book characters. We got the first trailer. Now, there were some people feeling a little apprehensive about, because it's not 2D animated. It's, you know, it's a 3D animation with the 2D cell shading kind of look to match it, but I thought it looked gorgeous.
It feels like a very modern take on a classic cartoon series. Like, we say X-Men the animated series, and if you ever watch the show, that amazing theme song gets stuck in your head, and the fact that they incorporated it into the trailer for it, couldn't have been happier. And like, to your point, I was shocked because there had been like talk about it being delayed to maybe the end of the year, beginning of next year even, for this show, based on how they've been rolling this stuff out. And Marvel was like, no, we're just kidding, we're done. Like, it's going to be out in March. We're like, what? Like, what the heck? What happened? Like that floored me. I couldn't be more excited. I kind of nerded out because I know you and I both share an appreciated love of the character Gambit from the show. It's like my favorite from that original series. And there's a particular clip in the trailer where you got Gambit on the back of Wolverine, and he's charging his claws before he goes to attack, and I'm just like, give me that episode now. Like, I'm so excited for that to come out. But yeah, the fact that they're dropping it in March, like, just so casually, like, okay, Marvel, I see you. Like, I see what Disney's up to. Like, you got it done, you're putting it out. I appreciate that, because there's so many times where we hear things about shows and it's just like, we're not going to see it for 6 to 8 months, or it's going to be a year, or sometimes 2 years before we see this stuff, and it's actually coming sooner than expected.
We haven't had a lot of promotion behind it. We've got a few images that have been released and a little smattering information, because we know it takes place like immediately after the original series ended, picking up from there. We did get a little bit of a cast list, which we're not going to go through all the names, but it looks like a good mix of original actors, because we've had a few of the original actors have passed away now. Sure. You have some actors like Jennifer Hale, who played Jean Grey in one of the other X-Men animated series, has come over to play Jean in this now. So you've got a few changes and mixes, but we've still got a pretty big original cast within there, and some really great voice actors coming onto this project. So I am so excited to watch this in a month.
Yeah, and one of my favorite castings of it was Ross Marquand, who's well known for non-voice acting for playing Aaron on The Walking Dead, and he was also the Red Skull in Endgame, I believe. Yeah, he wasn't in Infinity War, but playing the modern version of Red Skull in Endgame, and he's going to be the voice of Professor Charles Xavier now for this animated series, so I'm excited for that too. So
he's extremely impressive with his impressions, like his Hugo Weaving for the Red Skull. Like, I know I think we've both talked to people that wasn't Hugo.
Right.
No, that was Ross. That was not Hugo. That was Ross doing an impersonation. Like, he is fantastic at impersonation. He's a great actor outside of that, but his impressions are amazing.
Fun story. We went to a convention I want to say 2 years ago now, that he was at, and I got to meet him and talk to him for a good amount of time. If you've ever met Ross Marquand at a convention, if you haven't, I couldn't recommend it enough. He gives everybody more than a generous amount of time to talk to each individual person that meets him. He couldn't be nicer. He couldn't be kinder. He actually did his Red Skull impression for me without prompting, because I mentioned how much I enjoyed his take on it, and he kind of did a little bit of it for me, completely unprompted, and I kind of nerded out a little bit, but I was like, you are amazing. Like, you are so good at what you do, but it was so cool. But like, I couldn't be happier for him and the success that he's having in his career, because guy couldn't be nicer.
Yep. And it did look like with X-Men 97, we've got a brand new Marvel animation banner, that this is going to be the first release under that, as most everything has been just under the general Marvel Studios, unless it's like an association with Marvel. So now we got the Marvel animation banner, so it's definitely curious to see if, What If and everything gets moved underneath that banner and what else we kind of get from that, because now that we've got X-Men 97 trailer out there, there's already talks that they didn't want to use any of the X-Men in anything until they showed up in live action, but we're already hearing rumblings with What If, at least, that we might see Storm. We might see some of the X-Men 97 characters start spreading throughout the animation worlds, mainly with What If, because they can tell those stories. So now there's more excitement for me that we're going to start seeing the X-Men coming, because, Fox had all theirs. They were hit or miss. There were some great ones. There were some rough ones. But, we're still waiting for the MCU version of the X-Men, which is still a few years down the line. We're getting the Fantastic Four. I think we even get the Avengers movies before we're supposed to get these X-Men movies. So to at least see the animated versions start going throughout What If and other properties is really scratching that X-Men itch that we want. Plus, Deadpool and Wolverine, we're getting Hugh Jackman back. But to get more of our X-Men.
You're slowly starting to see him getting integrated more, right? So you're going to start seeing more of the X-Men, which I couldn't be happier for. Finally getting them mixed in. It kind of makes me wonder, no pun intended, what if you could have gotten some of these guys in like an Endgame or one of these old Avenger films? Like, could you imagine Robert Downey Jr. and Hugh Jackman playing off of each other? It would be great. It would be so much fun, but it is what it is. But at least we're getting it in some shape or form, and then moving forward, getting those X-Men properties and getting films and getting all these wonderful things made, hopefully that, they continue to do a good job with and get those integrated as soon as we possibly can. Because like you said, with them, we've harped on it before, but them putting more of a focus on these properties, that they're going to start, using them more and telling more stories with them, which makes me excited for the future of these films. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very hyped for that.
Because if you look at the comics and look before the MCU and stuff, the two major properties of Marvel is Fantastic Four and X-Men.
Correct.
Those were the main properties. Everybody, if you thought of Marvel, you're more than likely thinking of one of those two. Absolutely. And of course, the MCU spread more light on Iron Man and Thor, and of course, Spider-Man is way up there too.
Obviously.
But when you're talking about big team-up groups, Avengers, Fantastic Four, X-Men.
Yep.
So we still got to wait a little bit for the live action X-Men. We're getting Hugh Jackman in the Wolverine suit. That's going to hold us off for a little bit. But I'm really curious. Now that we're getting the Fantastic Four news, I'm ready to start seeing the X-Men take shape in the MCU.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to have more news on that as it comes. One of the shows that we talked about in our preview of 2024, which you can go back and check in our archives last week with our 2024 TV preview, was The Umbrella Academy, which is a show you and I have both loved over the years. Its final season is getting ready to drop, but they finally put a release date out, and it's coming out on August 8th. So it looks like towards the back half of the summer, we'll finally get that last season of The Umbrella Academy. I've loved the show. It's been such a fun telling of this story that got very popular very quickly. The comic books, I know, like Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance, has been attached to that and has written quite a bit of it, if not all of it. And having it come to life on screen has been a lot of fun, but it looks like we're finally getting to the end of it, I think. How do you feel about it?
I think, I've really enjoyed the series so far, but I do feel like it's time for it to end. Like, you don't want things to just go on to go on, to spread their story out too much. It feels like they've been able to keep it pretty tight for the most part. And it just feels like where they've gone and what we could see them going with it, this feels like the proper time for it to end. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they wrap it all up.
Agreed. And it's it's nice that it's not going to overstay its welcome and stay even longer, right? But to your point, it's time. So I'm excited to see how it wraps up, and of course, when that comes out, we'll definitely touch on it when it comes out.
Absolutely. Now, another little story that kind of caught me off guard this week, because when you think of horror, you've had some decent directors within the horror realm, and you've had like what we've talked about with Danny Boyle did with the 28 years, or 28 days, 28 weeks later movies and stuff. You've had some decent directors do some horror films, more you might see psychological thriller and other that from big name directors. But Christopher Nolan said that he is interested in doing a horror film. He just hasn't found that right story that really gets him excited to try to go with it. But I mean, when you think of big directors, like I'm thinking Scorsese and Spielberg and everything else, you're getting Nolan in that conversation. He is a masterful filmmaker, and it's really kind of exciting and interesting to see like what would he do in the horror realm. I would think it would be psychological thriller horror type of deal, but I mean, he knows how to make films, so.
Well, yeah, he's very good at making like big budget epic like stories. Like obviously with his Batman trilogy was absolutely brilliant. I'm a big fan of the movie Inception. I thought Inception was a brilliantly made film. We both had varying opinions on the movie Tenet, maybe, but getting him to kind of dabble into the horror genres got me very excited to see what kind of take he could make on it, because we're both avid horror fans as well, and seeing a director of that ilk try his hand in that genre that to your point, a lot of directors tend to shy away from, and for him to maybe be interested in dabbling in that has got me more than excited, because I love Nolan films. So like to your point, we both loved Oppenheimer, obviously. That was one of our favorite films of the year. Now that he's potentially eyeing a switch to this genre for a film to try his hat at it, I couldn't be more excited, if I'm being honest, because you said he's a masterful storyteller. He makes big cinema like feel cool, in my opinion. Like he's a great director, so I'm all for it.
Kind of story is first for him, along the great visuals and stuff. So, horror, you don't always think of great stories. There are some horror films with good stories and other stuff, but to have someone of his caliber take on horror, I'm intrigued and very interested to see what he could possibly do in the realm of horror.
So what film do you think he'll cast Cillian Murphy in?
No idea.
But it's a Nolan film. Cillian Murphy's going to be attached to it in some shape or form. But I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but like if it's a Nolan film, it's probably going to have Cillian Murphy attached to it in some shape or form.
Just depends, since he's coming back potentially coming back for 28 years later. That would be a couple horror films for him to return to, because he said, I think I saw an interview, 28 Days Later is the only film of his that he's rewatched because it had Cillian said, with such a big impact that what really jump-started things for him. So it's one that he goes back and revisits a lot. So we're really looking forward to 20 years later, but yeah. Nolan does have a habit of reusing actors because he casts extremely good actors, and why would you not want to work with them again?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's definitely interesting to see where he could possibly go if he ever ends up finding that story, because if you've heard any stories about how he does things, like he's very meticulous when he's crafting a story of how he chooses the stories he's taking on. So when he finally does do a horror film, he's done his homework to get it ready to be as best as he could make it.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head. So, like I said, we'll keep an eye out for that, obviously, and we'll talk more about it if he does decide to. If he finds a project that he's excited about and wants to make, we'll be more than happy to talk about it too. But one of the things I wanted to touch on before we get into our TV and film reviews is one of the big shows that got super popular over the pandemic and in the subsequent years since has been Suits. Suits has been. Suits aired for years on the USA Network, and it was moderately popular, but for whatever reason, I can't quite put my finger on it. It got super popular when it got on streaming. It showed up on Netflix. It blew up again, even more so, to the point now where we're finally getting a spinoff of that called Suits LA, and Suits LA actually casted their first lead in the show, and it's Stephen Amell, who is best well known for playing Green Arrow on the CW Green Arrow series, among other projects as well. He's in Heels on Stars, a wrestling show that is probably in my opinion, better than it gets credit for. But obviously with Arrow, it was such a huge comic book show. It was one of the better, well shown, well watched shows. But to him to try his hand in this, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it's big for him. Like you said, he had the Arrowverse, which is kind of now wrapping up because of the new DC. Because I believe they touched on Superman and Lois's ending because they didn't want to have that conflict.
Correct.
And so basically, all those shows that basically started, they did Smallville first on the CW, which ran for 10 years.
Long time.
And then, a little bit of break, and then we got the Arrowverse that had all these different shows. Now that's ending. He moved on to Heels. Now he's getting to do Suits. Like, it's good to see him. I enjoyed him in Arrow and all the Arrowverse shows. I never checked out Heels. I wanted to. I think it's of course, with him doing this, then got canceled, did it not, in its second or third season here with Heels?
It has gotten through 2 seasons on Stars, but I think their deal is up with Stars maybe, and they could be trying to get it on a different network. But yeah, the first 2 seasons is, in my opinion, very well done, and is a good show. It's one of those you don't have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy it as well, but if you are, it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't already. But yeah, like him getting attached to this is a big deal because I'm pretty certain it's going to wind up on a major network. Mm-hmm. So for him to be cast as the lead in that is very exciting. He's a great actor. He's a great guy, and I couldn't be happier for him. But I thought that was pretty neat that he got to be cast in that. So
yeah, it's really good for him. Moving on to our TV review, we're on episode 5 of Masters of the Air. So if you've been following along, we've been following the 100th Brigade through World War II here. And the last episode was one that was very slow. We got a lot of character development building. This one, still slightly slow, but we did get a lot more information and things going on. We got another mission for them, but we also got the 100th is in a bad place right now. They're running missions daily. They're losing a lot of people. Like it's a bad place, and we're getting to see that and experience that with them, that they're struggling right now to, why are we running all these missions? We're losing all our guys. And the mission they ran in this episode, they had to use planes that weren't theirs because they couldn't get them fixed fast enough for all these missions are running. And we're really seeing more of that dread and just kind of hurt from all these characters.
Yeah, and you also get some of that war element in this because they have a different target than they've normally had, right? Mm-hmm. So it's in a more urban area, a high possibility for civilian casualties that you haven't had in the previous mission, and how they respond to that. And then you also have, to your point, the kind of emotional toll that it's taking on these guys having to run subsequent missions, because you have some of the characters are like, well, we just literally ran one, can somebody else run this next one, kind of feel about it, right? And you get to check in with some of the characters that have had things happen to them and get a little more development to their point. But what I really appreciated about this episode was that it's kind of a swing back into the action, because there's a lot of it that does take place in the air. Yep. And what happens with that, and you just see this absolute beating that these guys are taking. Like, they're called the Bloody 100th, and they're kind of living up to that reputation, especially in this episode with everything that happens. And it's just, man, it feels like one gut punch after another for this, which it's war. It's not supposed to be, all right, it's all happy stories and everything, but man, it's heavy. And this one is extra on the heavy as well.
And I wouldn't particularly say I would consider myself claustrophobic, but these new planes that they've had to scramble to get together are much smaller than what they've been using to deal with. And the way they're having to squeeze through the walkways and into their areas, into the cockpit, like, I think it added that extra sense of dread, because it's just like they're sardines in a can,
right, being
just shot at over and over again. And by the time the episode ends, we're left with the 100th in a very rough place. And we got that real big emotional impact from that, but we also didn't get a lot of threads that opened 2 episodes ago. And last episode, we kind of went away from them for now.
A little bit, yeah.
But we also got some new threads with some of the 100th, where they may be, because we got a few more people behind enemy lines. So I would assume in the next episode, we got about 4 episodes left, that we're going to start seeing more of these stories about who's trapped behind enemy lines and what happens to them.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about this episode is you get kind of a new quote unquote lead character kind of comes into the play. And it's Rosie, and if you know anything about the story that these episodes are based off of, the real life story that it's drawing inspiration from, this guy is probably the most infamous member of this unit, and he's finally showing up in episode 5 here. And I expect, him to be a prominent feature in the show going towards the end of the series here, or at least this season. I think it's only one season anyway, but like you see like him kind of stepping to the forefront, and that's exciting because he's very intense in the air too. And there's a particular moment in the episode where, he may want, some of his guys may want to bail out, and he kind of asks them to hold and hold and hold and hold. And it's like, all you get instead of like a facial expression is he's covered with a mask, and you just see into his eyes, and you can feel that intensity coming off of him. And it was really well done and really well told. And I'm pretty excited for what they've got coming forward, because the preview for the next episode is also like really, really exciting as well.
And that's one thing I've enjoyed. One of the most things I've enjoyed about the series so far is the different ways that it shows the emotional weight, or where the characters are. You're experiencing things along with them. Like if they're on leave, of getting the joy and trying to find some normalcy, but then when something bad happens, you're, seeing how it happens in the air and how the pilots and stuff are feeling, but you're also getting a feeling of that dread and everything from the guys on the ground who, like, they have no idea what's happening until they show up. We had that again this episode, that, everyone on the ground, the mechanics and the majors and everybody else are like, where are my planes? Where are my guys? Where are they at? Like you're like there with them, dreading like who's safe, who's okay, who's coming home.
And you get the feel for like just the time that it takes place in, right? Because obviously now with technology being what it is, you can have those answers like that, but they really they really do a good job of capturing that emotional uncertainty that comes from not being able to track where these planes are and where these people are. Because obviously now with communication being the way it is, with all the technology that's captured in this plane, you could tell in 2 seconds where this plane drops if it drops before. But now you're like, okay, I don't know who's making it back. And they do a really good job of telling the emotional, like I said, the emotional uncertainty of that. And it's crazy to think that that's how, like, it's incredible now thinking of where we are versus where we've come from, of how these guys managed to make missions like this work back in the day without the benefit of all of that. You know what I mean? Where you have to rely on, you not saying you don't rely on your training now, but you have to rely even more on your training and being able to understand, how to navigate and things of that nature, and not having all of the electronic assists and things that we're used to now. And it does a really good job of making you feel that uncertainty, you know what I mean? And it's, in my opinion, that's a real highlight of the series for me so far, is just to kind of put yourself back in that time where, you don't have those means of communication like you do now. And you're just, these guys are literally looking to the skies to see who's coming back and who's showing up, know, and it's you feel it in here a little bit, as you start to get connected to these guys, and they do a good job of explaining that, I think.
Yeah, and seeing like the navigators, what they go through at the bottom of the planes, they're trying to map out the routes and everything else, but it's kind of also their duty to see, all right, what happened to this other plane? What happened to all these? And this kind of showed that, especially in the big chaos, like that's not always easy to be able to tell and know. So they're even, it's not them not doing their job, but it's just knowing just how insane these battles and these wars were, that when they're sitting at the table and they're discussing who's, what happened to these planes, was a kind of big, heavy moment, because it's just like you're sitting within that dread and that emotion with them, and you can see on the navigator's face, like, he hates that he wasn't able to have these updates for him, because like, there's so much they have to try to keep on, because they're, they're telling them where to bomb, and they're navigating their flight paths, and they're keeping track of all the other planes, and like that's a heavy load for them. Like, everybody during the war had a heavy load, but just it's something that not a lot of series or movies have really cared or shown about, is the navigators, and might be considered the little guys, but extremely important, and you got a good focus on them in this episode.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so it's very heavy, emotional and setting up for an interesting last four, because we have a lot of threads open now with a lot of characters in different locations and areas, many behind enemy lines. Some we just have no idea what happened to them. We don't know if they're dead. We don't know if they're alive. We don't know if they're behind enemy lines. Like, we don't have any knowledge, and it's curious to see if we are going to get a resolution for that, if it's going to be maybe, as we've seen, that they're trying to tell us how they would know. Maybe some of these stories are not meant to be told because they don't know, and from real life, what exactly happened to them.
Yeah, so it's gonna be fun to watch how they move along through the rest of the season. We're just past the halfway point now, like you said. There's 4 episodes to go, and we'll continue to cover that every week here. Yep. But now that we've talked about how much we love something, let's jump into our movie review for the week, which is Sony's Madam Web, which is thankfully just in association with Marvel Studios, not to kind of spoil it, but I want to preface before we get into the movie review that to kind of give context to how we feel about the film, we are going to get a little spoilery. We're not going to completely give you the plot of the film. Obviously, we're always going to advocate for you to go to see these films on your own and make your own judgments based on these films. But for us to be able to provide proper context to how we actually feel about this film, I feel we're going to have to get a little spoilery. So what we're going to do, if you're watching this video on YouTube, we will put a timestamp in the video of where you can jump ahead if you would not like to have any of the plot of the film spoiled for you. But like we said, to give context to the film and how we feel about it, we have to dive a little bit into the details of the film to kind of pare down why we feel about this film the way that we do.
Yep. So make sure you look down in the description or on the player bar. If you want to jump ahead of the spoiler stuff, we'll do. So we'll try to start off a little less spoilery, and then we'll get into the spoiler stuff. As I said, it's hard to really talk about it without talking about what really didn't work, because unfortunately, I don't think either of us have a lot of stuff with this film that we felt worked right.
Sure. So for context, Dakota Johnson is the lead of the film. She plays Cassandra Webb, who is a paramedic in New York City. She has a little bit of a complicated background with being orphaned as a child. Her mom passed at childbirth. Her mom was bitten by a spider. You know how the spider stories have told. She gets born with these latent spider-like abilities based on the area that the spider comes. It's kind of a hot mess kind of explaining the backstory of it.
Yeah, because it's not Spider-Man like it is, but it isn't, because there's clairvoyance that's part of this, which, I mean, I guess you could say Spider-Man with his, Peter Tingle, and the spider sense is kind of a little bit of clairvoyance, but this goes more into, like, she can actually see whole scenes of things that happen, of people's deaths or being harmed or something else, and jump back to present and potentially stop it or change it.
So when we say terms like Spider-Man adjacent, there's literally a side character named Ben Parker, which, if you know anything about Spider-Man, you know who Ben Parker is, right? So he's like her right hand in the paramedic world, and his nephew's about to be born. Wink, we know who his nephew is. But this film overall, in my opinion, was a bit of a hot mess, and that's putting it in the nicest way I think I could put it. In my opinion, I feel the dialogue felt like it was written by a teenager. Really, it was very stilted dialogue. wasn't very smart. Not that it always needs to be, but the dialogue very much felt like it was written by a teenager for teenagers. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but in like a more adult superhero real world stuff, there was a lot of it that kind of took me out of it.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I felt the same, and it's also, the Madam Web character is not one of these action star superheroes. She is a kind of a support character. She supports Spider-Man, helps other characters with her clairvoyance and everything else. So having, her being a lead of a movie, I was unsure about, because she's not really known, because, in the comics and things, that she's blind, she's in a wheelchair and other stuff. So, and of course, we're getting an origin story of her before anything like that happens. But she's not really known for being an action-packed character. So if you're thinking a superhero movie, you're thinking of action. And, to get a little bit into the spoiler stuff here, throughout the trailers and stuff, we got looks at Spider-Woman and some other spider characters, but unfortunately they were a very, very minor part of the movie. Those adult versions in their superhero suits is extremely minor part of the movie.
Right. So you see these, these three girls, and they're teenagers in the point of this film, right? So they're three teenage girls. One of them's played by Sydney Sweeney, who's very popular right now, kind of like an it actress in Hollywood at the moment. And she plays a teenager that, Cassandra Webb more or less saves these three girls, and there's like this whole plot film. My biggest gripe about this entire film is the way that the villain of the film was written, right? So this guy is essentially, spoiler alert, responsible for killing Cassandra Webb's mother, but he also has dealings with this tribe of, spider adjacent people who have these spider-like abilities, and he had the potential to be so much better villain, but I think the way he was written was absolutely terrible. The actor himself, not a knock on him at all. I think a lot of it has to do with script and editing in this point, because the guy who plays the main villain has been in some award-winning films. He's a Golden Globe nominated actor. Like he's done pretty good things. He's a French actor as well. I think that may have been a little bit of an issue with the editing in the film, because I know you doing work in some editing and some various things, like you could probably speak to this a little bit better than I could, and I'd like you to take the floor on it. But just the way he was edited was even like it just really irked me.
It looked like he was out of sync to the audio. Like it looked like he's saying something and his mouth is not moving, and then all of a sudden his mouth starts, like either the actor wasn't articulating when he spoke too much, but it looked like a bad dub almost to him at times. Sometimes it looked fine, but other times it just looked like he's talking and his lips are not moving, and then all of a sudden he starts, and they said, but yeah, the villain overall was so paper thin. Like there was no real backstory. We got that he was in the jungle with her mom. He wanted the spider for himself, but the only motivation we got for what he was doing is because no one was there to help him and his family was starving. Right. But we got no information about what he did for a living, who really he was, why was he doing all this. We just got that he wanted it because his family was starved. But like, there was no other depth to him. And then we meet him in the modern world. Well, this actually took place back in 2003, so Correct. It's not even up to date to where everything else is. The only other thing we really learn about him is that he has a vision that the three girls of Spider-Woman and the other two were going to kill him. And so his whole motivation is, I'm going to kill them before they kill me. That's all we got out of the villain. Yeah. There's no other depth, nothing. We have no motivation. We barely even have a name to him at times. Like, if you even remember what his name is, because they just refer to him as the spider guy, the wall climbing guy.
I believe his name is Ezekiel.
But he's such a forgettable. And of course, he's wearing a suit that's very Spider-Man-esque. But it's a very forgettable villain that just did not really do much in the movie.
Well, to your point, like the dialogue, even the dialogue for the villain felt very stunted, right? And there's a lot of points in the film where he's talking, but you're not even seeing him talk. And he's just like he's talking over comms, or he's giving some kind of very poorly written like one-liner that he has to include or whatever. And it's just so not good. And it sucks because, I feel like we got hoodwinked a little bit by Sony in this case, because to your point, we go in expecting seeing all these girls just kick butt and, be these awesome heroes that, they are in the comic book world and everything. And you get very little of it, if not in a flash forward and a vision, you know what I mean? And that's not to put any like knock on these girls that are, playing the teenage versions of themselves, because they do a good job. I think they're one of the highlights of the film for me. I think those characters were written humanly very well. Like, they're innocent teenagers who just happen to be thrown together by circumstance, and here's what happens. But you don't even, sorry, I'm going to spoil it a little bit more. Like, you don't even get to understand how they become the spider people that they become.
Yeah,
because there's no origin for them at all. Like there's no, they never get like, sorry, I'm going to spoil it again. They don't get bit in this film. Like you don't see them become them. You know they become them because they tell you, but you don't even get how they get there. Like I get it, it's a Madam Web film, but these girls were kind of played to be important too. You know what I mean?
It kind of ends showing them back in their suits again. But again, that whole, you saw nothing past them being damsels in distress and everything else. And then so, these are these girls. Like
it really bothered me.
Yeah, it just, none of the actors in here really felt like they had proper material to work with. Like you said, the writing, the story, the dialogue, just kind of everything was rough. Even when they were trying to show, you know, Cassandra dealing with these time jumps uncontrolled, it felt just a little jittery that you were kind of lost within it because of how things are happening and how is she going to learn to control them. And well, she goes back again, more spoilers. So a lot of this review may not be spoiler free because again, it's hard to talk about without it, that she ends up, you know, being able to learn about her powers, and they rework a famous Spider-Man line, which I don't think it was terrible, but it made me laugh because like they're using the Spider-Man line for her, and they repeat it a couple times. So like, did you see what we did there? Like, here you go, we'll do it again. Like
a wink and a nudge.
It was just, this movie was a mess. Again, we do advocate, if you had any interest in this at all, still go check it out. You know, build your own opinion on it. Even if you go to the cheap days to go see it or see it on streaming or something, we'll advocate at least a watch for something. But this was a mess.
Yeah, and in my opinion, sometimes if I know that it's going to be like that going into it, I go in and have fun with it and laugh at how absurd it is. Because, like I said, we feel how we feel about the movie. You may go and enjoy. You may go watch this movie and find enjoyment out of it. I didn't say I didn't enjoy the film. I just said it wasn't a good one. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, it's still a comic book property. I'm gonna find entertainment in it, and I did. And to their point, there's a lot of really good actors in the film. You know what I mean? Like Dakota Johnson's in it. Ben Parker is played by Adam Scott. Adam Scott is a great actor as well. But it's just that it wasn't a good script. It wasn't edited very well. And it's definitely, and in my opinion, of all of the recent comic book films set around this, it ranks, unfortunately, at the bottom for me. I think it's probably the worst of all of the modern superhero films that we've come to watch lately, and it's just, unfortunately, it ranks dead last for me. And that's saying something because we have gotten some stinkers, but it's definitely last place for me. It
is, of course, in the Spider-Man universe, Sony's done the Venom films, which it had its issues too, but that had much more enjoyment to it because it did stick a little bit more to the Venom character. You went more with the anti-hero hero already, not getting like the villain part connected to Spider-Man, terrorizing the town. Correct. And we kind of jumped right into the hero, anti-hero part of Venom, but it was enjoyable with Tom Hardy and everything. It's not up there with a lot of the MCU stuff, but Madam Web is definitely well below par on enjoyment.
Venom 3 is coming, my friend.
We do have Venom 3 coming, but there is talks to kind of put it in with, because this is Spider-Man, Spider-Universe related. Mm-hmm. There's been talks of a little bit of trouble with finding the direction on Spider-Man 4, that they're talking about doing another Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland. Sony apparently wants it to be another multiverse film that has, Andrew and Toby coming back, while Marvel wants to keep it to a more grounded street level, which is kind of where we left off with the character at the end of No Way Home.
Correct.
I'm thinking Madam Web is probably going to be a stake for them to say, hey, we need to have, Marvel's going to be like, we're going to have control. You had full control of Madam Web. It wasn't good. We're going to do what we want to do with Spider-Man. I can see it be using as a talking point with trying to figure out where they want to go, that Marvel's going to say, hey, this wasn't good. let us do what we want with Spider-Man.
Well, hopefully they can figure it out. But like we said, go see the film for yourself, form your own opinions. Let us know in the comments what you think of the film when you go and see it. We would be very much happy to have that conversation with you as well. So any engagement you want to give for that, we're all for it. But Madam Web is currently out in theaters right now, so go check it out if you get a chance.
And this is definitely one to talk about. On our Discord, we do have set up a movie spoiler channel that we can go into and we can talk full spoilers, go all out on it. So come join us over there and let's talk about what you felt about it. But I think a lot of opinions of this movie are going to be pretty much the same.
Well, if anything, I don't put a whole lot of stake in like Rotten Tomatoes and aggregate scores and everything for obvious reasons. But if it gives you any information, it ranks equally with Morbius, and I will just leave it at that.
It's worse than Morbin time right now.
Oh boy.
And Morbius was not great either.
So do with that information what you will. It's on par with that for a good reason. It's one of the few times that I feel like a lot of people rating that film gives it an appropriate score, I think. And so, like I said, go see it for yourself, form your own opinions. Come join our Discord. We do have a link in our Discord in all of our video descriptions. So get in there, come talk to us. We'd love to have you in there. We'd love to talk to you. And
if you just want to come laugh at how bad things were, come laugh at how bad things were.
I would be more than happy to have that conversation as well, because I would love to give it a proper shredding online as well.
It's important. I didn't have a whole lot of faith going in. Just that first trailer made it look. It didn't get you excited about it, and unfortunately, it was right.
So it is what it is.
We do have some interesting things coming up this week, though. So there's smaller films, but there's kind of star-studded films coming out. So in theaters this week, we have Driveway Dolls, which is a dark comedy by Ethan Coen, which looks kind of interesting. I think I saw Matt Damon in the trailer with a little bit of a cameo. Like, it looks like one of those quirky, dark comedies that can be pretty enjoyable to watch. I haven't heard a whole lot on it past a couple trailers that we've seen, but it looks like it could be fun. We also have Ordinary Angels, which is a Hilary Swank and Alan Ritchson drama set in Kentucky, so a little close for home. I'm not sure exactly. It's more in Kentucky than the area that we find ourselves around. Sure. But it looks like a pretty decent movie about Alan Richardson's kid needs some medical procedures, but they can't have it done. He doesn't have the money for it. So definitely, it seems like it has some funny parts, but more if it's a kind of a darker drama. And then lastly, we have Right Hand Red, which I got to admit, I haven't seen anything on until I was looking up what was coming out. So this is an Orlando Bloom and Andy McDowell crime drama where, and it kind of seems typical story that a guy who had involvement with these crime people is hiding out and they find him. But it looks like a pretty dark drama with it. Could be interesting. Orlando Bloom is a good actor. So is Andy McDowell. So it's interesting to see how that's going to be. But that one is also launching on digital the same time that it's going into theaters. So got a few choices to check out, but also one that we're going to review on the next episode we're going to watch this week was Bob Marley's One Love. It came out at the same time Madam Web. We decided to go with Madam Web. Sorry. But we will have Bob Marley One Love on the next episode because we're really looking forward to seeing that biopic.
I'm beyond excited to see that. Bob Marley is an icon of reggae culture, and a lot of the beauty and positivity that he brought into the world will be explored in the film, and I can't wait to go see it, talk about it, and give everybody our opinions on that film when it comes out as well. I am excited about Drive-Away Dolls, though. I do love the Coen brothers, so seeing one of the Coen brothers direct this film, absolutely going to check it out and see what they do with that, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I'll check out the others as well, but definitely one I wanted to highlight just because I am a Coen brothers fan as well. So.
And we do have one kind of notable movie on streaming coming from Tyler Perry, his Mea Culpa movie starring Kelly Rowland. It's a kind of crime thriller itself as well, coming out on Netflix on February 23rd. So that one could be interesting. Of course, he's known for, mainly for the one certain character that he's done, but it's good to see more stuff come out of him and what he's able to create, because he is a talented director and writer.
Yeah, Tyler Perry Studios puts out a lot of good stuff as well. Obviously, Medea is the one he's most known for, but Tyler Perry Studios does put out a lot of good work as well. And I love Kelly Rowland, so definitely plan on checking that out. But it's also a big week in TV too. Like this week coming up, it's so much good stuff. But stuff coming out on digital this week, you've got Constellation that's going to premiere on Apple TV Plus on February 21st. I know you and I are both excited to check that out. Excited to watch that. But the one I'm probably most excited for is Avatar: The Last Airbender is finally coming out also on Netflix on the 21st. Can't wait for that.
On the 22nd for
Is it
that
the 22nd?
one. Yep.
Yeah, the 22nd. That's right. Sorry. I got a little ahead of myself. I was going to look for it on the 21st and I was going to be very upset.
You're too excited. You need to calm down.
No calm.
Calm down.
Sorry. Calm.
So I got to keep them in line sometimes.
But I'm excited. But we're definitely going to, I plan on binge watching that the entire weekend. So I will have that probably watched within 2 days if I were to guess.
Yep.
And we'll touch on that as well next week. We'll give our initial thoughts on that. But also the big premiere of The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, is also on February 25th. So this coming Sunday on AMC, you can see the continuing story of Rick and Michonne, two of the main characters from the Walking Dead series, finally get their spinoff. You get some resolution for what happened to these two after having left the original Walking Dead series. So that one's coming with a lot of hype as well, that it's going to be out weekly episodes on AMC. I'm very much looking forward to that one as well.
Yep. So on the next episode, we will be reviewing the 6th episode of Masters of the Air. We'll give our initial impressions of the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, and we'll be reviewing the film of Bob Marley's One Love.
Yep, a lot of stuff to look forward to next week. And that does it for this week here on We'll Bring the Popcorn. Once again, we can't thank everybody enough for all of their feedback, all of their kind words. The love you've shared with us online has been amazing. We thank you so much for your continued support. Once again, you can find us on YouTube, anywhere you get your audio podcasts. We're on all the things and stuff. So we're on all the social medias. Come find us there. Come say hi. Anywhere you see us post a clip, give us your feelings on anything we've talked about, any shows, things you're watching that you're getting a lot of enjoyment out of. We really would like to engage with you and talk about everything that we're enjoying. But until next time, this has been We'll Bring the Popcorn. I'm Josh. He's Brad. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much.